Welcome to Watch the Booker Man and to the third week of build for Sacrifice 2012. The big story coming out of last week's show was that Paul Heyman accepted Kurt Angle's Sacrifice challenge on behalf of Brock Lesnar. So Brock Lesnar's huge debut match will be taking place at that pay-per-view, but there's a lot more build to that show to come on what is going to be a pretty packed episode in itself. Kurt Angle is going to face Roderick Strong in the main event after their interactions in the last couple of weeks, but we begin with AJ Styles and Chris Hero against the American Wolves, two former enemies now forced together as the last two men standing against the New Age of Honor, and we'll see how that goes as we kick off Impact Wrestling. Albeit following a video package which recaps the ending of last week's show, Kurt Angle's challenge accepted by Paul Heyman. We then welcome to the viewers by the commentators who put over that Kurt Angle will make his first competitive appearance on Impact Wrestling ever since the rebrand. He has not competed on television, and it's his first TV match since August 2011. His opponent is the man who he teamed with 9 months ago, Roderick Strong, so a lot's changed in the time away is what we're getting across here. Roderick Strong went from the humble understudy of Kurt Angle to now being somebody who is very, very arrogant and is stepping out on his own. It is also confirmed that we will hear from Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, who will go in depth on the former UFC Undisputed World Heavyweight Champion's return to professional wrestling and his decision to accept the contract offer from Impact Wrestling over any other that was on the table. We however go into that really good opening match, an 80 rating, getting the crowd hotter, and we can't really complain about that. During the match, AJ Styles sets up for a phenomenal forearm, but Austin Aries comes out and distracts the referee. During this time, Brody Lee can pull Chris Hero off the apron, throwing him into the steel steps. From there, and in the distraction, the American Wolves are able to take control, and after their double team finisher, Davey Richards gets a huge pinfall victory over AJ Styles, continuing to play into what has been a very difficult few months for AJ Styles. And also, we wanted the American Wolves as the established duo to pick up the victory. After the match, with AJ Styles down, Austin Aries directs Brody Lee to return his attention to Chris Hero, who is still down, slumped by the steel steps. Speaking into the ear of Big Rig, Austin Aries orders Brody Lee to pick up the steps while he leans Hero against the bottom half of them. Brody then drives the steel steps into the skull of Chris Hero, so it's a very safe spot, but one that looks particularly brutal. The two men then enter the ring, with Austin Aries squatting beside AJ Styles and saying that this started between the two of them at the very beginning of this year. It was the second episode of Impact Wrestling that Austin Aries and AJ Styles first interacted. AJ had the chance to keep away. They drew a line under their rivalry as Aries went on to deal with other things. Entering the Lethal Lockdown was the worst decision he ever made. Just look around. Everybody, Tyler Black, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, Jimmy Jacobs, they may have won that battle at Lockdown, but it looks like Austin Aries has just finished the war. There are no more originals, just AJ Styles. And at Sacrifice, AJ is going to have nobody to back him up. He is the final sacrifice of the New Age of Honor. So Aries seemingly implying that he will go one-on-one with AJ Styles at the pay-per-view. And by now, medics are well on the scene. They have stretchered Chris Hero out of the building. So again, we thought that Lethal Lockdown was the ending of this big rivalry, and it seemed like the New Age Originals had come out on top. But in the 3 weeks since that pay-per-view, we have seen every single member of that group be stretchered out or carried out in some way, and in very, very severe ways that have been taken out. The War is Over storyline loses heat. Brody Lee, whenever he's in these segments, he does tend to bring them down, but that's the downside of trying to push somebody. We're trying to bring Brody Lee up, and if the case is that it brings our segments down, then it's just something I'm going to have to deal with, because I do want Brody Lee established on this roster by the time that we end this save at Slammiversary. While the scene at ringside is dealt with, the commentators introduce a replay of the finish of last week's main event, where Beer Money and the Briscoes drew in a tables match. This was a #1 contendership match. The winners would have faced Danielson and Wolfe at Sacrifice for the Impact World Tag Team Championships, and the Impact Wrestling cameras caught up with the two men separately following the match. Brian made the point that since neither team had won, they needed to earn a shot another way. They both, of course, performed really, really well in the match, but they didn't do what they needed to do. Wolfe, on the other hand, says that he's been impressed by both teams in recent weeks, and he's quite happy to face either of them at Sacrifice. He'll let management decide what happens after that. Desmond Wolfe was then asked about the suggestion that had been raised of a three-way at Sacrifice, and he says that as tough of a challenge as that would be, he's happy to fight all comers and any comers for the Impact World Tag Team Championships. We go into a not very good match, and I'm not surprised. It was just us giving the returning Aja Kong a victory in a pretty straightforward squash win. She only puts in a 34. She's not that over, but this is more about having a challenger for Hamada at Sacrifice, because we haven't done the best job of building up too many challenges for her. So we brought back a formerly undefeated competitor, and we're just trying to, at least in the couple of weeks that we've got, put over that she is a threat to Hamada and a threat to anybody in the Knockouts division. Now, I just went back to the booking screen here because I did realise that I'd double-clicked something here. It never showed up on the screen. It was a Sarita promo talking about her match against Awesome Kong later tonight. She says that she is fighting on behalf of Rosita. She is ready to suffer against Amazing Kong later tonight. However, after the match, it is Aja Kong whose arm is raised. The Impact Knockouts champion Hamada coming out and going face-to-face with the victorious returning competitor. Hamada raises her championship high in the air, looking to turn away with no further incident. However, she then looks to catch her Sacrifice opponent off guard, turning back to hit a kick, but Aja Kong absorbs the blow, shakes it off, much to the shock of our Impact Knockouts champion. Aja then hits Hamada with a spinning back fist, dropping the champion to the canvas. And the commentators put over just how unstoppable Aja Kong has been since she came to Impact Wrestling, or TNA as it was then, and she has remained entirely undefeated in that run. We then get a segment in the parking lot where Austin Aries, who is followed by Brody Lee as always, beckons the Impact Wrestling cameras over to follow him as he talks about there being nothing left of the so-called New Age originals. Apart from one thing, that is. He then approaches the vehicle that has been associated with the New Age since early 2010. Aries adds this: Chris Hero may have arrived in this vehicle here tonight, but everybody saw he left in an ambulance. He suggests that an emergency vehicle may be a more suitable mode of transport for these guys going forward, especially after what he's about to do to this one. Walking in from the sides, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards each have a steel pipe in their hands, the same weapons that were used when they ambushed the New Age Originals a few months ago. So probably details that only I'd remember, but it does all tie back together. They proceed to join Austin Aries in destroying the van that they too used to travel in. Remember, this was once one group who all travelled together. Pulling out a switchblade, Brody Lee slashes the tyres of the vehicle while Austin Aries drives a steel pipe through the windshield. Eventually, security arrive because obviously there's an incident going on in the Impact Wrestling parking lot. The group disperse, but the damage has been done. We see then the shot of the New Age's iconic vehicle that's been with us for 2.5 years now, whatever it is, maybe not that long, about 2 years, just in a complete state of disarray, and that is symbolic of the fact that the New Age Originals, as far as Austin Aries is concerned, do not exist anymore. All 4 members of that group have been taken out, and Austin Aries once again sends the warning to AJ Styles. He's going to see Davey Richards next week on Impact Wrestling, then Austin Aries at Sacrifice, and he promises that is going to be the end of the Phenomenal One in Impact Wrestling. Desmond Wolfe comes down to the ring saying that he's pretty pissed off to have to do this, but since Bryan Danielson isn't willing to speak to him, he's going to have to make this public. Simply put, he says that enough is enough. They need to sort out who's challenging for the Impact World Tag Team Championships at Sacrifice, and Bryan needs to be part of that decision. It's no good them deciding next week or a few days before Sacrifice. They need time to prepare for whoever they are going to face. Bryan Danielson does come down to the ring, but only to tell Wolfe that he wants no part of any joint decision that they need to make. Wolfe was happy to steal the fall to do it himself at Lockdown, so maybe he can be just as decisive tonight and give the obvious answer to the challenge that they've both just received in the back. Danielson then walks off, and Wolfe shrugs, saying that if you want me to make the decision, then I accept the challenge. Bryan turns around, looking at Wolfe like he's crazy, asking him if he is stupid. Wolfe then fills everybody else in on what the two men obviously already know. They'll defend against Beer Money and the Briscoes at Sacrifice. So you could say that Desmond Wolfe is cutting off his own nose to spite his face there. Bryan also being a little bit petty. If he had such strong feelings about the decision, why did he not, vocalize them? It's just another sign of this dysfunctional team. And actually, if they'd just got on the same page, they'd be in a much better position. But because they didn't, Desmond Wolfe has now made a decision that Bryan is definitely not happy with at all. Following a recap of the 3 members of Team USA being laid out by Kurt Angle last week, Roderick Strong and the Young Bucks promote the main event of tonight's show. While Nick and Matt look to go straight into their usual arrogant trash talk, Roderick Strong tells them to shut up. Strong says that tonight isn't a joke, And since aligning with the Young Bucks, he hasn't lost a match. He's beaten Desmond Wolfe, he's beaten Chris Sabin, and he's beaten Alex Shelley. People aren't going to believe him when he says this, and that's fine, but his winning run isn't ending tonight. Last time Kurt Angle wrestled on television on this network, Roderick Strong stood shoulder to shoulder beside him. He has learnt more from Kurt Angle than anybody in his 2 years in this company, and he has studied the best to ever do this forensically, week in and week out. He knows every step, every move, and every counter, and he is going to prove it tonight. He then turns to the Young Bucks, telling them that they too better get the job done in their match tonight, because he's not going to need them to come out in the main event. He's got Kurt Angle's number. So not that good of a segment, but just further promoting tonight's main event as we finish the hour with Awesome Kong defeating Sarita in 5 minutes and 59 with an implant buster. Sarita, who has been turned on by Awesome Kong, but really the purpose of this match is to put over the newly heel Awesome Kong as an unstoppable monster, and despite the heart and determination that Sarita shows, there is no way she can compete with Kong in 5 minutes and 52. It's a dominant victory, to be fair, and a very, very good performance from Awesome Kong. Very happy to see that, and good chemistry as Awesome Kong continues to stalk Sarita. After the match, Rosita runs down looking to make the save, attacking her former partner. Rosita is simply swatted away by Awesome Kong, who barely has to break a sweat to stop her. Continuing to come back despite repeatedly being pushed down, Rosita eventually gets on the back of Kong, looking to choke her out. Kong, however, just backs into the corner, squashing Rosita against the turnbuckle. Merely irritated by the persistence of her former partner, Awesome Kong just walks off. She doesn't need to do anything else to Rosita. Rosita then drags herself up in the corner, grabbing a microphone from ringside. She tells Kong, who is now long gone to be fair, that she will not give up, she will not back down, and she wants to fight Awesome Kong at Sacrifice. Now at the top of the ramp, Awesome Kong simply looks back over her shoulder, a huge smirk growing on her face, giving us a clear indication that she is more than happy to fight Rosita at that pay-per-view, and it's probably not going to be pretty, but it is a match now set for Sacrifice, former tag team champions. I think I've done that with pretty much every set of tag team champions that we've had. I wouldn't even want to go through and look, but I know for a fact we've done it with Tara and Mickie James. Maybe I'm overstating it there, but we do actually need to turn Awesome Kong heel. It's not gone down particularly well. She's been getting really good ratings recently, so I'm hoping it's not too bad of a turn there. It says not particularly well. It didn't say it was a disaster or anything, so we should be okay as we end the first hour and come back to Kurt Angle being interviewed about his main event match against Roderick Strong. He is asked his opinion on what he expects to hear from Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman later tonight. Kurt Angle says he agrees with a lot of what he heard Roderick Strong say earlier, but tonight is about teaching him another lesson. He says he's learnt a lot from him. Well, this may be one final teaching from mentor to protege. If Roderick and the Young Bucks want to walk around proclaiming that they're gold medalists, they need to be ready for what happens when you get in the ring with a real Olympic gold medalist. If any of the Roderick Strong that he took under his wing when he came to this company still exists, then he wants him to prove it tonight. He loves to hear those words from Roderick Strong because it tells him that that Roderick Strong may still exist. And if he doesn't want to prove himself, feel free to bring the Young Bucks along too. All three of them can learn the same lesson from him tonight. As for Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, he's happy to hear them out, but Sacrifice is about something very different than tonight. When the going gets tough, some punks decide to walk away. Kurt Angle, however, is ready to embrace the huge challenge in front of him of Brock Lesnar, and he's going to focus on that after he's dealt with Roderick Strong tonight. So losing heat to the storyline because it's a short segment, but again, we have segments that are going to bring it back up, so I'm not too worried. The Young Bucks do actually pick up a victory as Roderick Strong ordered from them, defeating Colt Cabana and El Generico, and we actually get the return of Kevin Steen, who we have not seen in some time, but he appears from the crowd and grabs El Generico's leg as the former X Division champion sets up for a haluva kick. This allows Steen's stablemates, the Young Bucks, to take control, hit a more bang for your buck, and it is a second defeat for El Generico in under a month after an undefeated start to the year, very heavily caveated by the return of Kevin Steen, who hasn't been seen since he and Paul London lost their tag team championships match. Colt Cabana the weak link, but it is Generico who is pinned. Another huge win for the Young Bucks there, and it's basically back to that old story. Kevin Steen puts his arms around the Young Bucks in celebration, hugging his stablemates upon his return to Impact Wrestling. And how else could he return than to continue to be a thorn in the side of El Generico? Once the three men head up the ramp, Colt Cabana returns to the ring looking to lift the spirits of El Generico. However, understandably, he cannot get through to the former X Division champion. With his Sacrifice opponent in action next, Charlie Haas is interviewed about his upcoming match with Amazing Red. Red is on a 6-match winning streak and presents a unique threat to the X Division champion. The question is, what is their plan? I think JB should be on screen here. Jim Cornette handles the question, saying that he doesn't know if JB has noticed, but Charlie's on a bit of a run of his own right now. A run that led him to the X Division championship. Cornette says that Red has a hell of a lot of talent in his small frame, but Charlie Haas simply doesn't see him as a threat. JB asks Cornette what his opinion on the challenge is, but Jim says that any doubts that anybody has about Haas being able to handle the speed and agility of Red are going to be eliminated pretty soon, so you don't need to worry about that. That is a hint to what happens next, because during his entrance for his scheduled match, Amazing Red is jumped on the stage by Adam Pearce. Pearce lays into the #1 contender to the X Division Championship, hitting him with a series of punches to the head. Red looks to fight back, but he's overpowered by Pearce, setting up Red on the outside. Pearce hits a powerbomb to Charlie Haas's Sacrifice opponent, slamming him into the guardrail. Red slumps on the outside as a medic rushes to check on him. As Adam Pearce reaches the top of the ramp, he is greeted by Jim Cornette, who has a huge smile on his face and shakes hands with Scrap Iron. The two men then leave together, scrambling as the upcoming match is now clearly not taking place. The commentators send to the back. But of course, that thing that we teased last week, the history between Pearce and Jim Cornette, well, that's come to fruition now, because Cornette has clearly called in a favour after that conversation that he had with Adam Pearce. Cutting to the back, the Impact Wrestling cameras catch up with Samoa Joe, who looks just about ready to leave the building, having not been booked on tonight's show. Samoa Joe is asked if he has given any thoughts to Jay Lethal's proposal from last week regarding the pair of them potentially becoming a tag team. Joe laughs, he's a little bit annoyed by this, so now you want to talk to me, and just carries on along his way. The cameras follow, saying that Jay Lethal is going to be in an impromptu replacement match up next now that Amazing Red can't compete, and he wonders if he's going to keep an eye on that. Joe says he's really not going to help them fill the time on the show and threatens violence if they don't get out of his face. Returning to ringside, the commentators confirm that it is Christopher Daniels and Jay Lethal up next. Looking at it from a booking perspective, the idea that this is a filler match and you're getting two guys who have very much been overlooked, that's kind of intentionally what I did, but I understand the contradiction there of it not looking good on our show. Christopher Daniels then defeats Jay Lethal, so a pretty surprising win for him. 7 minutes and 39 following botched interference from Maria. Maria trying to get involved, Frankie Kazarian alerting the referee to this, and then in the distraction, Daniels can take control and hit the best moonsault ever to Jay Lethal. After the match, when Frankie Kazarian joins Daniels celebrating in the ring, Lethal quickly returns to his feet, actually, so I think it was a roll-up, I think I did actually put a flash pinfall in there. He wants to argue with the referee and to argue with Daniels. Lethal is furious. He wasn't prepared. He wasn't ready for this. He's got every excuse. Kazarian points out that they were both in the exact same situation. Lethal is furious. He looks ready to continue to fight, but he's also outnumbered, so decides instead to just complain up the ramp, essentially. Daniels and Kazarian standing tall, and that filler match is actually going to lead to a couple of different things, so hopefully not too much of a waste of TV time. Mickie James then promotes the Knockouts Tag Team Championship #1 Contenders Battle Royal at Sacrifice, saying that after some doubts that she'd be able to compete after how she's been feeling in the last week or two, she will compete in that match at Sacrifice. She's been feeling the effects of that attack from Hamada a few weeks ago. She felt that even during her match with Angelina Love, but she battled through to win. That's exactly what she intends to do at Sacrifice. Meanwhile, she hopes that Aja Kong can put Hamada back in her place at Sacrifice. She may be the only person in this company with more of a reason to be mad at Hamada than Mickie James and Gail Kim. She's feeling better each day, however, and next week she's going to face Sara Del Rey in a one-on-one match. She really wants to test herself at the top level. She knows how dangerous Del Rey is, and that's why it's the perfect test to see if she is ready to be in championship contention at Slammiversary. We then get a sit-down interview with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, conducted by Mike Tenay, and Paul, of course, is doing the heavy lifting in terms of the talking, and that's why it comes out as a really good rated 86. When asked why Brock Lesnar came to Impact Wrestling, Paul Heyman says it's simple. Lesnar has won championships everywhere he's been. It took him 3 months to become the WWE champion. It took him 3 fights to become the UFC heavyweight champion. Paul says that Brock thinks he can do one better in Impact Wrestling, but calls Kurt Angle the perfect first opponent for Brock Lesnar. Paul heavily puts over Kurt Angle, who, having worked with him up close for the last 2 years, he says he is the best wrestler to ever compete in Impact Wrestling, and this Kurt Angle is even better than the Kurt Angle that faced Brock Lesnar all those years ago. However, at Sacrifice, that moniker of being the greatest to ever compete in Impact Wrestling, that changes. The Impact World Champion may be out of action because of what Brock Lesnar did, but Heyman hopes that Jeff Hardy is watching this at home. Dixie Carter did a lot of things to ensure that Brock Lesnar chose to come here over any other offer that may have been on the table for them, and that means that whether Jeff Hardy is cleared or not, that title is in the very near future of Brock Lesnar, so implying there's some sort of contractual stipulation for a world title shot in Brock Lesnar's future, but not quite putting a date on when that is. Roderick Strong puts in a decent performance against Kurt Angle. It's a 92 rated main event, so absolutely incredible. It shows that you can put Kurt Angle, anybody who's good in the ring versus Kurt Angle is going to be a superb match, and we did have good heat to go with it, but a 92 main event is fantastic for Impact Wrestling, but Kurt Angle picks up a clean victory. It is good to see Roderick Strong going over 10 minutes with Kurt Angle, so it definitely doesn't make him look bad by comparison by any means. Kurt Angle then stands tall in the ring, having picked up a huge victory in his first TV match in over 9 months, and that was hopefully the draw for this main event over anything else. While Roderick Strong gave him somewhat of a challenge, it was also clear to see how sharp and ready Kurt Angle is for the bigger challenge that is coming his way. The commentators put over the main event of Sacrifice as Paul Heyman comes out to the top of the ramp. Paul says that he was very impressed with what he's just seen from Kurt Angle, and it's clear that he is in tip-top fighting condition, but that doesn't mean that he's ready for Sacrifice. He better be ready next week, because Brock Lesnar will be here face to face just 72 hours before his return to the ring at Sacrifice, so only the second Impact Wrestling appearance of Brock Lesnar in this month, something that when you bring Brock Lesnar on board, you've got to accept and you've got to get used to. Of course, I could have quite easily used him on every show, but I do want to work around that limited schedule that Brock Lesnar has, and one of those in-person appearances that we'll get from him will be on next week's show, the go-home show to Sacrifice, but we've also got Evolve for this week to go through, so we'll get into that right now. And Evolve Wrestling begins with a video package that looks back at something we just saw on Impact Wrestling, basically the actions of Austin Aries, Brody Lee and the Wolves. They first took out Chris Hero in that opening match before destroying the New Age vehicle. That leads into Brody Lee picking up a one-sided squash victory, but unfortunately sustaining a whiplash neck strain in the process. Not very good for somebody who we're trying to give a push. He wins in 4 minutes and 19 with a running big boot. Only a 22 rating for the match, not only because Brody was off his game, but because he was injured, and we've brought the crowd down there unsurprisingly. Brody Lee with only a 33 isn't very good, but he was clearly slowed by injury. That's unfortunate, but after the match, he simply stands tall in the ring. A dominant, decisive win for him. We then get a promo from Kenny King, who promotes his match with Homicide in tonight's main event. The winner will face D'Angelo De Niro next week for an Evolve Wrestling Championship shot, and he doesn't do well without a script and loses heat to the storyline, so not the best start to the show so far, but Mickie James bringing things back up with a 61 performance. It does take her 8 minutes and 28 against Jazz, and she does struggle, slowed by her kayfabe injury and the struggles that she's been having, but a Mick kick sees her pick up the victory, as I said, in 8 minutes and 28. And next week, we will see her face a much tougher challenge in SDR, Sarah Del Rey, on Impact Wrestling next week. Homicide is ready for Kenny King likewise, and then taking the Pope's title next week on Evolve Wrestling. That's been the main rivalry really in this storyline. A lot of different people have got involved, Sonjay Dutt, Kenny King, even Kenny Omega slightly, but Homicide has his sights set on the Pope and his championship. Another poor match, this because of where it was placed. A high spots match needed a crowd that was buzzing, and the things that have happened on the show so far, I guess we're not quite there. But Adam Cole picks up a victory over Jack Evans, 7 minutes and 31, his first singles victory since joining the company, and he is joined by his tag team partner Kyle O'Reilly as they celebrate that win. We then get a video package looking back at the rivalry between mostly D'Angelo De Niro and Homicide. Homicide taking D'Angelo De Niro out with a Gringo Killer on the outside, and D'Angelo De Niro just gives his thoughts. He's putting over his personal sort of vendetta against Homicide, but also the fact that he sees Kenny King as a future star, and he'd love to see him get another shot at the Evolve Wrestling Championship over a bitter veteran like Homicide. Promo segment Mischief and Daisy Hayes. It's a solid segment from them. They're in the Battle Royal at Sacrifice, and they want to win that so they can get revenge on Flash and Del Rey at Slammiversary and become the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. It's a steal the show match. Crowd gets buzzing, so it's really, really good. But Homicide with a 63 over Kenny King's 55 means that he is the right choice. A decent match as a Gringo Killer sees him pick up the win in 13 minutes and 20, gaining heat to the storyline. And to end the show, Homicide and D'Angelo Dinero go face to face next week in our main event. D'Angelo Dinero will defend the Evolve Wrestling Championship. It's a 60, a decent show. It was very straightforward, really. It was matches, promos, nothing too complicated going on Evolve, just us trying to build up certain people. We've done it with Kenny Omega in recent weeks, Homicide as well, and of course people like Adam Cole now starting to get those pushes. We might not see them through to fruition, but it's interesting to, I think, at least see who the next group of people we're going to be pushing are. Sara Del Rey, who has been an impactful wrestler, now a regular wrestler, don't see that changing things too much, and we'll see what the impact on Brody Lee is. This injury, I'm not actually sure. He can still perform, so it's obviously not something too bad, but we will see how long it's going to affect him for, because he is, well, I'm not going to give a spoiler away, but he'll be fine for next week's show, so no concerns there whatsoever. We've got the news there that we saw, the ratings coming through. Yeah, still doing really, really well in that regard. Everything going really well as we continue the build to Sacrifice, and of course Brock Lesnar v Kurt Angle is the main thing, the main talking point, but I do think we're going to put together a very good pay-per-view around that, so that it's not just a one match card, and hopefully you'll join me for the final week of build to that show. Sacrifice coming very, very soon, Slammiversary the month after that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.